Did I reincarnate after jumping off a building in despair? At the engagement banquet, I was dressed in a red gown, looking elegant and poised. The next second, the sweet love video playing on the big screen suddenly changed. The affectionate boyfriend I thought I had already changed his heart. My parents weren't even my biological parents either. Everything was fake. So, what was real? In the depths of grief, I threw away the engagement ring and angrily punched the scumbag. I'm not getting married, damn it. I had a dream. In the dream, I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my own sister. Heartbroken, I went to a bar to drown my sorrows, but the more I drank, the sadder I got. After coming out of the bar late at night, I walked dazedly into a small alley and was abducted by a few hooligans who were following me. They took me to an abandoned warehouse, where I spent the 3 longest and most agonizing days of my life. 3 days later, I was rescued by the police. My mother hugged me and cried uncontrollably, while my father smoked with his head down in silence. This made my already numb heart feel a little warmth. Fortunately, my family still loved me. Just didn't expect that even this family affection was fake. After persuading me to agree not to make a big fuss and not to call the police, they threw me abroad to fend for myself on the grounds that I had disgraced the Grace family. But when I was in unbearable pain, they held a grand wedding for my sister and my former fiancé. I saw the wedding video. It was sent to me by my good sister Olivia herself. The scene was decorated dreamily and luxuriously. The fresh flowers airlifted from abroad filled the entire wedding venue. They were her favorite colors, pink and blue. She and Marcus smiled at each other among the falling flowers and kissed passionately. The groom was tall and handsome, and the bride was petite and gorgeous. Even the master of ceremonies couldn't help exclaiming, "What a lovely couple." Yes, I closed my eyes. What a lovely couple indeed. A bitch and a dog, together forever. The video also had a caption, and it was these words that drove me to the edge of despair. You were an unwanted child from the start. Your biological parents abandoned you, and it was my parents who picked you up from the garbage dump. So, no one loves you. If I were you, I wouldn't have the face to continue living in this world. At that time, I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and my emotions were extremely fragile. The double blow of the video and the truth was too much for me to bear, and my already faltering will to live immediately collapsed. I no longer tried to survive, but I didn't want to let them have an easy time either. I used my last money to buy a plane ticket back to the city. In the middle of the night, I sneaked past the security patrol and secretly climbed to the top floor of the Grace Group building. Taking advantage of the darkness, I hung the pre-prepared banner from the top floor and sat on the rooftop to watch the sunrise for the last time. The sun never stops for anyone. It arrives as promised, shining brightly. At 8:30 in the morning, the busiest time at the Grace Group, people were coming and going to work or just passing by. I smiled and took a leap. I was free. The dream ended. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether this was reality or a dream. I didn't know if it was really just a dream or my past life that I had actually experienced. The person next to me on the pillow was sleeping soundly, with a faint snore. I collected myself and pinched the soft flesh on his waist hard, with full force and no mercy. Sure enough, I heard a yelp. It seemed really painful. Woken up by my pinch, Marcus looked displeased for just a moment. He lowered his head and then looked up again, his face full of resentment, looking at me like a pitiful little dog. Honey, why did you pinch me? Anyone would be in a mood if suddenly woken up from a deep sleep, but he wasn't, or rather, his emotions were hidden, so he wasn't normal. I reached a conclusion in an instant. So, I deliberately pretended to be dazed. Huh? Did I pinch you? Look, it's red. Marcus turned on the light to show me. I raised my hand to block the blinding light, muttering, then I must have had a nightmare. Go back to sleep. We have to work tomorrow. Seeing this, Marcus didn't think much of it. Thinking that I really had a nightmare, he turned off the light, rolled over, and soon fell asleep again. As for me, I lay quietly beside him, awake all night. Sure enough, I had lived such a miserable and aggrieved life in my past life that even God couldn't bear to watch. So, he sent me back to start anew. Well, in this life, I need to think carefully about how to give those who hurt me a big gift. In my past life, when Olivia said I wasn't their biological child, I believed her. If I wasn't their biological child, it made sense that their attitude towards me took a nosedive after Olivia was born. If I wasn't their biological child, it was understandable that they persuaded me not to pursue the matter after I was rescued, saying that it would be bad for my reputation if I made a big fuss. If I wasn't their biological child, it was reasonable that they let Olivia snatch my fiancé, because the Marcus family had already become prosperous by then, and Marcus was a good candidate for a husband. So, all their partiality and neglect towards me over the past 20+ years became justifiable. However, if they weren't my parents, then where were my biological parents? Perhaps due to the lack of family affection in my past life, now that I was reincarnated, I wanted to try to find out information about my biological parents. Whether I could find them or not, it would be an answer to myself. Just do it. When I was at work during the day, I asked for leave, saying that I wasn't feeling well and needed to go to the hospital. Then I went alone to the blood sample collection point at the Public Security Bureau to collect my blood sample and information. To avoid attracting attention, I was fully armed. I changed into a set of clothes I had never worn before, put on a fisherman's hat, sunglasses, and a mask, and even wore high heels. You know, because Marcus said I didn't look good in high heels, I usually didn't wear them. I only wore them occasionally when required for company meetings. With this outfit, Marcus probably wouldn't even recognize me if he stood in front of me. After collecting the blood samples, I found a public restroom to change my clothes. After that, I went back to the company to continue working. I heard you went to the hospital. Are you sick? The intern I was mentoring asked me in a whisper. I smiled at him and said, "It's nothing serious. Just a minor ailment." The doctor prescribed some medicine. Although he was the intern I was mentoring, we didn't have much of a personal relationship, because Marcus didn't like it. He was extremely jealous and couldn't accept me having any friends of the opposite sex. We had a huge fight over the issue of me mentoring a male intern. In the end, I placated him by saying that apart from work, I would have no other interactions with the intern. He also knew that it was hard for me to refuse the company's arrangement, so he dropped the matter after I promised him earnestly several times. He said that he loved me so much and cared about me so deeply that he didn't want any other person of the opposite sex around me except him. Having lived in his sweet words for a long time, I didn't notice anything wrong at all. I had forgotten that he wasn't like this in the beginning. And I wasn't so humble in the beginning either. We were alumni from the same university and met during an activity of the student union. After we met, he started to pursue me, but I was always hesitant. Because he was so handsome and good at coaxing people with sweet words, I felt very insecure. Marcus seemed helpless about this and complained, "How can you judge a person by their appearance? Besides, only you think I'm good looking. It's just like the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, . I rejected him many times, but he wasn't discouraged at all and still pursued me tirelessly. He said, "I've fallen for a girl for the first time, and I'll never give up easily." And he really did what he said. He pursued me for a year and a half, sincerely and passionately. In the end, even my roommates were touched. He sent me daily greetings, flowers and gifts on festivals, and was extremely considerate when we went out occasionally, without any overstepping behavior. Knowing that I liked to stay in bed in the morning, he would bring me breakfast to the classroom every day. He would bring me an umbrella when it rained, and hot chestnut stir-fries and half-sugar milk tea when it snowed. His care for me, time after time, seeped into my life like rain falling softly on the ground. I was a child lacking in love. Since my sister was born, no one had treated me like this. So later on, although I was still rejecting him, I had actually been attracted to him already. On Christmas Eve of my junior year, he invited me to the amusement park. We took the Ferris wheel together. When the Ferris wheel reached the highest point, I looked at the brilliant night view outside the window and was very happy. Seeing me so happy, he smiled and said to me, "Do you know a legend about the Ferris wheel?" "What legend?" I didn't understand. He gently cupped my face, looked into my eyes, and said in a gentle and affectionate voice, "When the Ferris wheel reaches the highest point, if you kiss your lover, you will be happy forever." His face was getting closer and closer to mine, and I couldn't help closing my eyes. When his soft lips touched mine, I felt like being electrified and clenched my fists. He chuckled and whispered in my ear, "Miss Grace, would you like to be my girlfriend?" I opened my eyes and nodded shyly with a red face. He hugged me into his arms and kissed me again. This time, it wasn't just a light touch but a deep, lingering kiss until I was out of breath before he let me go. We thus established our relationship. During college, he had always been very good to me, even better than when he was pursuing me. After graduation, it was only natural that we moved in together and started living together. In the past, I was too greedy for this happiness and ignored many abnormalities in life. After I started working, he frowned and asked me why I didn't work for the Grace Group. We put our salaries together, and he said he wanted to save money to buy a house and give me a home. He often worked overtime all night and didn't come home. The little probes during our usual chats, and the way he brainwashed me bit by bit during our fights, lowering my bottom line. There were so many things that didn't seem right, but I was like a blind person, immersed in this false happiness. Like a fool, I was being toyed with by the people around me. It wasn't until my last life, when I had the will to die, that I realized that this relationship had been mixed with too many other things from the very beginning. Fortunately, now, everything is still in time. Marcus hasn't hooked up with Olivia yet. First, he hasn't determined the attitude of the Grace family towards me. Second, he isn't rich enough yet, and Olivia doesn't look up to him. I originally planned to take things slowly, but unexpectedly, the opportunity came soon. More than 10 days after the blood sample collection, my phone rang while I was at work. The caller ID showed exactly the Public Security Bureau where I had gone to collect the blood samples. "Hello, is this Ms. Grace? The comparison results of your blood samples have come out." After hanging up the phone, I sat at my workstation, feeling a bit lost for a moment. I was eager to find my biological parents in my heart, but I was also very scared. Since they had left records in the system, they should be looking for me, right? But why didn't anyone come to find me until I died in my last life? Would my biological parents be like my adoptive parents, having another child and then no longer loving me? My mind was in a mess, and I didn't know whether I should take the initiative to contact them or not. Unexpectedly, I wanted to wait a bit, but they couldn't wait. On Friday, my adoptive father called me, saying that there was something at home and asking me to go back. I glanced at the calendar and racked my brains for a long time before I remembered what had happened on this day in my past life. At that time, I still didn't know that I wasn't their biological child. I went home happily for the weekend, but what was waiting for me was a drafted will. A will stating that all their property would be inherited by Olivia after their death. I was completely stunned. It wasn't because I lost the right to inherit a huge amount of property, but because I was hit hard by my parents' heartlessness. I knew that they had always been partial to my sister. After my sister was born, I was like a servant at home. But I didn't expect that they could be so cruel enough to want to kick me out immediately. Tears streamed down my face, and I choked and asked, "Why? What have I done wrong? Aren't Olivia and I both your daughters?" All along, I thought that all parents in the world loved their children. So I always comforted myself by thinking that my sister was younger and needed their care and attention more. But I forgot that Olivia was only 3 years younger than me. Olivia, dressed in Chanel, sat on the sofa arrogantly and said, "There's no need for so many whys. Haven't you already lived with your boyfriend? Once you get married, this won't be your home anymore. We're just informing you a bit earlier now. And what about you? Won't you get married?" She raised her eyebrows and said, "Please. When I get married in the future, I'll definitely find someone from a similar family background. Then our two families can support each other and develop even better. What about you? What can your boyfriend do to help the family? I'm afraid your parents will have to subsidize you instead. Later, I walked out of the house in a daze and walked along the road until I reached the river. At the river, I sat from dusk till dawn. There were many moments when I wanted to jump in and end it all. In the end, I didn't jump. Instead, I saved a person from the water and got a huge opportunity. I could have ensured a worry-free life for myself in the future, but because of what Olivia said and being extremely love-struck, I handed this opportunity over to Marcus. It helped the Marcus family take off, and the Marcus family and the Grace family became related by marriage. But I died with hatred and didn't have a good end. Not this time. This time, I'll help you all achieve your wishes. On my way home from work, I was recalling the scene of saving that person back then and was preparing to save someone again. Not for that opportunity, but just to save a life. Maybe I was thinking too deeply, and I accidentally bumped into someone. Ouch. I bumped into a middle-aged couple. Coming back to my senses, I quickly apologized. I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Are you okay? The middle-aged man waved his hand and looked at me, his lips trembling but unable to speak. The woman next to him was the same, with red eyes and an expression of nervousness and concern that couldn't be hidden. So, I tentatively asked, "Are you here to look for me?" This sentence was like a switch. The middle-aged couple immediately rushed forward and hugged me into their arms. Baby, Mom is sorry. Mom has come to take you home." I was a bit nervous looking at the woman who was crying loudly while hugging me. They didn't even verify my identity and just hugged me and cried. Had I run into human traffickers? Fortunately, the middle-aged man reacted in time. He took out the printed comparison proof and found a nearby restaurant and dragged me there to talk in detail. During the conversation, the middle-aged woman, that is, my biological mother, hugged me and cried a lot. The process was quite eventful and I won't go into details. Anyway, I successfully recognized my relatives. It was like a dream. I actually found my biological parents. Moreover, it wasn't that they didn't love me and deliberately abandoned me. They had been looking for me all these years. After chatting, they drove me back to my rented apartment. My father looked at the shabby neighborhood and wanted to say something but held back. He could hold back, but my mother couldn't. The tears that had just stopped flowing down again. "Baby, you've suffered so much these years. Tonight, come with Mom and Dad to the hotel first. Tomorrow we'll go look at houses." Me, yes, my biological parents are rich. I thought the Grace family was rich enough, but I didn't expect that my biological parents were much richer than them. My father said, "Don't we have several houses in the city? Although they're a bit small, they're better than this place. Tomorrow, we'll ask the housekeeping service to clean up one for Baby to live in first. We'll move again when the new house is renovated." No, that's not right. My mother's mind also caught up at this moment. Why should it be in the city? Baby should come back to our city with us. My father wholeheartedly agreed with this proposal. Of course I'd be happy to go back to their city with them, but if I left now, how could I take revenge? After much persuasion, I managed to send them away. I went back to my small rented apartment alone. My head was still a bit dizzy. I couldn't believe that these were really my biological parents. Not only were they rich, but they also loved me so much. At this moment, I was the happiest person in the world. In the following days, I played along with Marcus on the surface while preparing my grand revenge plan. I saved that old man at the same time and the same place as I did in my previous life. It wasn't for his gratitude but simply to save his life. After sending him to the hospital and making sure he was okay, I left quietly. After a while, using the connections of my biological parents, I introduced a big business deal to Marcus, just like in my previous life. Before the introduction, I made a request that we should get married. Marcus put his arm around me, being gentle and affectionate, and said, "Of course, my Grace deserves the best of everything." He was still waiting to get rich through me, so naturally he agreed to everything. However, he didn't know that in my previous life, it was a real big business deal, but in this life, this big business deal was an abyss that would doom him to eternal damnation. It was a bottomless pit, one that neither the Marcus family nor the Grace family could fill even if they combined their resources. But in the early stage, it seemed flawless. The business of the Marcus family was thriving, and Marcus was looking more energetic day by day. When the parents of both sides met before the engagement, he and Olivia added each other on WeChat. I knew that it wouldn't be long before the two of them got involved with each other. So I installed hidden cameras at home and also hired a private detective. Sure enough, soon Marcus's attitude towards me changed. He was getting more and more impatient with me day by day and often didn't come home at night. Don't ask why, because the answer was always that he had social engagements. I didn't care. As long as the engagement banquet was held as planned, it was okay. Amid the various ulterior motives of everyone, the engagement banquet finally arrived. Needless to say, the Grace family, although they didn't value me much, still had to keep up appearances. The Marcus family was a rising star in this city and also attracted a lot of attention. Well, I liked a lively atmosphere too. The livelier the scene was, the happier I would be. So the engagement banquet was extremely lively, with a scale comparable to that of an ordinary family's wedding banquet. The most high-end five-star hotel in the city, the top-notch banquet hall, hundreds of tables of guests, the highest standard. At this time, Olivia wasn't so in love with Marcus that she had to marry him. Getting involved with him was just for fun and to spite me, so she didn't comment on the scale of the engagement banquet. I invited 7 or 8 tables of friends. Even Marcus was wondering where I got so many friends from. All of my friends were good-looking and had great figures. Yes, I paid a group of internet celebrities to be my friends. Why? Of course, it was to publicize the live situation of the engagement banquet in real time. After all the guests had arrived, Marcus's parents were sitting in the front row, grinning from ear to ear. They were quite satisfied with me. I had introduced business opportunities to them and they could climb up the social ladder by getting connected with the Grace family through me. This daughter-in-law was worth marrying. My parents and Olivia were sitting on the other side, while I was in the lounge. This was my suggestion. I said that the engagement banquet should also have a sense of ceremony like a wedding. After the ceremony started, I would enter from the entrance of the banquet hall, walk to the stage, and Marcus would propose to me. Soon, the ceremony began and the procedures went on one by one. Soon it came to the part that I had carefully designed. The recording devices of the internet celebrities were also all ready. Now, let's invite our other protagonist today, the bride-to-be Grace, to enter, announced the host. The door of the banquet hall opened, and I walked in slowly, wearing a red gown, looking elegant, poised, and walking with a swaying grace. After careful dressing up, I still looked very beautiful. Marcus was a bit stunned looking at me, probably thinking that I, who usually didn't stand out much, could be so beautiful after putting on makeup. I smiled at him from afar, and he immediately returned his signature smile. The big screen was playing the daily sweet videos of Marcus and me, and everyone watching the videos offered their congratulations loudly. Suddenly, things took a turn for the worse. The video on the screen was somehow replaced by a short video of Marcus and Olivia, and the volume was turned up to the maximum. Suddenly, the banquet hall seemed to have turned into a recording site, with the sounds of moaning and groaning filling the air. At first, the guests didn't realize that the female lead in the video wasn't me, thinking that the video of Marcus and me had been leaked, and they cast sympathetic, teasing, and lecherous looks one after another. But looking at my expression, they realized something was wrong. I stared fixedly at the big screen, and the expression on my face was not shyness but blatant anger. I raised the microphone in my hand and said angrily, "Marcus, do you know that Olivia is my own sister? How could you sleep with Olivia behind my back?" I deliberately said this slowly, word by word, so that everyone present could hear it clearly. Marcus's face turned pale immediately. He wanted to turn off the big screen but didn't know how, scurrying around like a headless chicken. Olivia was already feeling displeased seeing me stealing the spotlight today. She didn't expect her figure to suddenly appear on the screen, and with a high-definition face at that. The scene was in chaos. The guests didn't expect to get such a big scoop at an engagement banquet, and they all craned their necks to see better. The internet celebrities couldn't sit still either. They all found the best positions to watch the drama unfold, and some even started a live broadcast directly to share this unique engagement banquet with netizens. I walked up to the stage in a few quick steps and raised my hand to slap Marcus hard across the face. Marcus, you said you loved me and couldn't wait to marry me and take me home. Is this how impatient you are? I had tears in my eyes and my voice was choked. Marcus didn't know whether to comfort me first or turn off the big screen first. I didn't give him a chance to speak at all and immediately slapped him again. After that, I pointed at Olivia in the audience. One is my fiancée, and the other is my beloved younger sister for so many years. Are you two even human? Olivia was a bit stunned, not knowing why this was happening. I didn't give them a chance to react. Tears streamed down my face, but my words didn't stop for a moment. Marcus, you always said that your family had no money and you weren't good enough for me, and you didn't want others to say you were a freeloader. I was worried about your pride, so I brought you easy money-making opportunities. I introduced resources to you and accompanied you to socialize with clients. Is this how you repay me? I turned to Olivia. Olivia, you've loved to snatch my things since you were little. No matter what I had, you'd snatch it. In the end, I had to give everything to you, and I was left with nothing. But Marcus is a person. He's my boyfriend, the husband who will accompany me for the rest of my life. Do you have to snatch him too? At this point, I was crying uncontrollably. Mom and Dad only love you. They made a will leaving all the family property to you. I already have nothing. Now, do you even want to take away my last bit of happiness? Made a will? Everyone was shocked. Is this really something biological parents would do? The guests in the audience were talking among themselves. My adoptive father rushed onto the stage with a livid face and slapped me hard. Are you crazy? What nonsense are you talking about? Come home with me right now. I won't go back. I won't go back. You and Mom will beat me to death if I go back. Whoa. I signaled the security guards nearby to stop these people while crying out loud. Hearing this, the guests in the audience looked at me with even more sympathy. At this time, the video on the big screen changed again. The camera panned to Marcus and Olivia sitting face to face in a coffee shop. They were a good-looking couple, looking quite harmonious. But the content of their conversation shocked everyone. Olivia, is it true? Grace isn't your parents' biological child? Marcus looked shocked. Olivia had a gentle expression on her face, but her words were extremely vicious. Of course. She was picked up from the garbage dump by my parents. She's just a little piece of trash. It turned out that 20 years ago, the couple of the Grace family had been married for many years but had no children. After being advised by an expert, they were going to adopt a child. On the way to the orphanage, they picked me up from the garbage dump. After taking me home, 3 years later, Olivia was born. From then on, I became a redundant person. However, the experts said that they were destined to have no children, and I was destined to have a younger sister, so even after having a child, they couldn't drive me away. Therefore, they couldn't drive me away, but they could turn a blind eye when Olivia bullied me and could write a will leaving all the property to Olivia. Marcus, then why did you tell me this? Olivia smiled sweetly, because I think you're a good person and I don't want you to be deceived by her. When Marcus and Olivia finally turned off the big screen, everything was settled. Everyone had seen what they should see, heard what they should hear, and understood what they should understand. My adoptive parents were blocked by the security guards and couldn't come over. They could only stand there and curse at me. Olivia, thinking that she had been seen by so many people, screamed in anger, Grace, you little slut. I'll kill you. Just wait. You'll die horrible des. After cursing, she cried to my adoptive parents, she's not my sister. She's a bastard. Why should she be part of the Grace family? I want to drive her out of the house right now. With her mention, my adoptive father also made up his mind. He simply went all out. Olivia is right. You were never part of our family. We were kind enough to raise you and treated you like our own daughter. We didn't expect you to repay mom and dad like this. You messed up the good engagement banquet and even made fake videos to frame your sister. Our Grace family can't tolerate a daughter as vicious and shameful as you. Goodness. This is really the villain filing the complaint first. He kept saying it was a fake video. But the public has discerning eyes. Whether the video is real or fake can be seen at a glance. It's useless for him to whitewash the situation. I had been holding the microphone in my hand. Without shouting myself hoarse, my voice could still ring through the banquet hall. Dad, did you really treat me like your own daughter? Since Olivia was born, I've been a nobody in the family, just Olivia's little follower. I had no new clothes or new toys. The clothes were all the ones Olivia didn't want after wearing them out and then threw them to me. I never knew what I did wrong that I couldn't get your and mom's love. I worked so hard, hoping that you and mom would look at me once and praise me. Only today did I realize that no matter how hard I tried, it was useless, just because I wasn't your biological child. I was crying uncontrollably, vividly portraying a daughter who was devastated upon suddenly learning the truth. My adoptive father was even angrier seeing me like this. He broke through the security guard's blockade and rushed over. He slapped me twice again, without showing any mercy. I was hit and fell to the ground, and my face immediately swelled up. My adoptive mother also rushed over, panting, immediately, right now, drive this dead girl out of the Grace family. So, the two of them, under the witness of many relatives and friends, forced themselves to look resolute and announced categorically that they were cutting off all relations with me, and they quickly signed the notarized document of severing relations. It was really something for Olivia to be able to get the severance statement so quickly. I pretended to be extremely reluctant. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, I was forced by them to sign and put my fingerprint on it. Actually, I was already laughing inside. After signing the severance document, the Grace family and the Marcus family politely asked the relatives and friends to leave one after another, dropping many hints in their words, intending to suppress the news. They didn't know that the group of friends I had invited had already live-streamed everything that happened at the engagement banquet, and by now it had caused a huge stir on the internet. Having feasted on this fresh gossip and gained popularity online, the internet celebrities left satisfied. However, they didn't expect that one wave had barely subsided when another rose. A man and a woman, who clearly looked like no ordinary people, walked in with a group of people, striding in with an imposing manner. This looked really bad. Now, no one wanted to leave anymore and stayed to watch the drama unfold. I was still covering my face and pretending to cry. The moment I saw my biological parents coming, I immediately felt extremely aggrieved and the tears started pouring down as if they were free. My mother gave me a worried look and then quickly looked away. I knew she was afraid of giving the game away. After all, the play still had to go on. My adoptive father also had some knowledge of the world. When he saw my biological parents, he felt they looked familiar, but his emotions were in such turmoil that he couldn't recall where he had seen them for a moment. So, he spoke respectfully, "I'm Alex from the Grace family in the city. May I ask what brings you two here?" My father didn't want to pay any attention to him at all, but to go through the formalities, he reluctantly said, "I'm here to find my biological daughter, the one you picked up." My adoptive father's whole body went rigid, and he slowly turned his head to look at me. "You're saying Grace is your daughter?" My father nodded. "Who the hell are you? You come up and say Grace is your daughter. She must have paid you to deceive us. She's clearly just a piece of trash and should be with the trash." Olivia was not happy and shouted, waving her arms around. My father suppressed his anger. He didn't want to argue with a little girl and lose his dignity. He only looked at my adoptive father. "If you've ever been to the city, you should know me. I'm Edward." "Edward? Edward, the richest man in the city?" My adoptive father staggered back 2 steps, feeling his legs go weak. He remembered. He had seen Edward from a distance once at a dinner party, and the woman beside him was exactly his wife. At that dinner party, he heard people saying that Edward's daughter had been harmed by villains when she was very young and there had been no news of her since. They had searched for a long time but couldn't find her, thinking that the little girl was already dead. Unexpectedly, the daughter he had raised for more than 20 years was actually Edward's biological daughter. My parents, who had finally gone through the formalities, didn't want to look at the people from the Grace family anymore. They came to my side and said gently, "Are you Grace? We are your mom and dad." Originally, they both still remembered their lines and were pretending that this was our first meeting. But when I looked up and they saw my swollen cheek, my biological father got angry. He forgot all about the lines and formalities. Usually a restrained and gentle man, he suddenly glared at Alex. What happened to her face? Alex hemmed and hawed for a long time but couldn't say a word. My father snorted and said to my mother, "Honey, let's take the child and leave first. Let little Goo and the others handle the rest." Although there was no threat in his words, everyone could see that he was very angry. After saying that, without looking at anyone else present, they each put an arm around me and walked out through the door of the banquet hall. Before leaving, I heard Olivia, who was still going crazy, screaming, "Who let her go? Who let her go? She made me suffer so much today. I'll make that bitch pay with her life." Olivia was going crazy and making threats. Before my father could say anything, Alex couldn't hold it in anymore. As if finding an outlet for all the complicated emotions churning inside him, he suddenly turned around and slapped her, telling her to shut up. Unexpectedly, this slap made Olivia even crazier. This was the first time she had been hit since she was born. She had always had everything she wanted and been adored by others. When had she ever suffered such humiliation as today? Now, even her father, who had always loved her the most, had slapped her. She was crying and shouting as she chased after me, but was stopped by the hotel security guards. How the rest of the matter was handled had nothing to do with me. Of course, it had nothing to do with me on the surface. After the engagement banquet ended, the Grace family and the Marcus family found that this farce had spread widely on the internet. It was impossible to suppress the news. Although they didn't say anything to each other's faces at that time due to the influence of the two families, privately, the Grace family and the Marcus family had completely lost face. With my deliberate indulgence, the business of the Marcus family wasn't affected much. So, for the sake of interests and also to regain face, it wasn't long before Marcus and Olivia got engaged. This engagement was very low-key. The two families got together, invited a few tables of relatives, had a meal, and it was hastily over. In comparison, although my engagement banquet seemed like a farce at that time, it was luxurious and grand. Olivia had always hated me. She wouldn't care about what grievances I had suffered at that engagement banquet. She only cared that the engagement ceremony she had been looking forward to was so hasty. Moreover, reliable sources indicated that for the sake of binding interests, Olivia and Marcus had obtained their marriage certificates on the day of their engagement. Therefore, she hated me even more. However, although she hated me, I didn't expect her to be really this stupid. The same tricks from my past life were being used again. In the dead of night, 4 or 5 hooligans blocked me in an alley and, under the cover of darkness, drove me to an abandoned warehouse. When I saw this warehouse, I felt a bit dazed. Unexpectedly, after going around in circles, I still ended up here. In my past life, it was right here that I was in a wretched state, desperate, with no way to survive and no way to die either. Taking a few deep breaths, I told myself that everything was in the past. This time, I was well prepared. Once inside the warehouse, I was pushed down hard onto the ground, getting covered in dust. With my eyes full of horror, I cowered and backed away, saying, "How much money do you want? I can give it to you. Please let me go." The hooligans approached me with a sinister grin and said, "I'm not short of money. I just want to have some fun with you today." Just as his hand was about to touch my clothes, I was helpless. I had originally wanted to get some information out of them, but these guys were too impatient. The next second, the door of the warehouse was kicked open. Taking advantage of the moment when the hooligans were stunned, I stood up and ran towards the door. It didn't matter that I didn't get the evidence. The police would take care of it. Soon, the howling patrol cars took them all away. The police were really efficient. They quickly sorted out the dealings between Olivia and these hooligans and took Olivia away from the Grace family on the charge of suspected kidnapping. The Grace family panicked. They begged people, sent gifts, and tried to pull strings. After going around in circles, they finally came to me. Grace, Olivia is your sister. The sister you watched grow up since she was a child. She's your own sister. How could you be so cruel to her? My adoptive mother, who looked 10 years older, finally bowed her noble head to me. It's not that I'm cruel to her. It's she who is cruel to me. The fact that she hired people to kidnap me is there, and I can't do anything about it. Seeing that my biological father hadn't stood up for me during this period, my adoptive father felt more confident when talking to me and said, "But you didn't get hurt, did you? Since nothing happened to you, can't you forgive your sister? She's still a child. How could you be so heartless?" I was so angry at this shameless statement that I laughed. Does the fact that I didn't get hurt mean that this didn't happen? Then why did you come to me? Isn't Olivia still alive? Not wanting to look at this couple's faces anymore, I called the security guards to politely escort them out. During this period, the Marcus family had made a lot of money. The Grace family, as their in-laws, had also developed better and better after getting tied up with the Marcus family. The two families did a few short-term trades together and made a fortune, becoming more and more complacent. So, in the most recent trade, they put all their funds in and also borrowed a lot of money from the bank through mortgage loans. The Marcus family wanted to go even further, while the Grace family wanted to spend more money to pull some strings to get Olivia out. While the Grace family was busy trying to get Olivia out, I made my move. The two families' dreams of getting rich were shattered, and everything went down the drain. They lost everything. Their companies went bankrupt, they had to go through liquidation and compensation, and their villas and luxury cars were all taken away. The two families had to move to the neighborhood where I used to rent an apartment with Marcus. My adoptive father had high blood pressure and coronary heart disease. When the news of the total loss of goods came, he was so angry that he had a stroke. With her husband of many years on one side and her daughter in urgent need of rescue on the other, my adoptive mother's hair turned white overnight. Eventually, Olivia's criminal act of hiring people to kidnap was confirmed, and she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. However, when she was about to be taken into custody, it was discovered that she was pregnant, so the sentence was changed to serving her term outside prison. I laughed. She was really lucky. But who could say for sure if it was really lucky or not? I managed to get the video of her having an affair with other men to Marcus. Seeing the video, Marcus flew into a rage. He was already cold-hearted and chauvinistic. He had been with me originally just for my family's property. Later, when he found out that I was an adopted daughter, he immediately hooked up with Olivia. Now that the Grace family was bankrupt, Olivia was in trouble, and she had even cuckolded him. How could he bear this? He took his mother to confront Olivia. During the scuffle, Olivia pushed Marcus's mother, and her head hit the steps and she was knocked unconscious on the spot. Seeing his mother like this, Marcus was furious. Thinking that Olivia was serving her term outside prison because of her pregnancy and that the baby in her belly might not be his, anger welled up in him, and he kicked her belly hard. By the time they were pulled apart, Olivia was bleeding profusely from her lower body. After being sent to the hospital for examination, the baby was gone, and Olivia could never get pregnant again. Marcus's mother never woke up after being knocked unconscious. Both Olivia and Marcus were charged with intentional injury this time and were both sent to prison. No one could escape. After the Grace family and the Marcus family went bankrupt, I went back to the city. I moved to my parents' manor to live with them. They were extremely sad and guilty about losing me before. They didn't have another child or adopt one. It had always been just the two of them. Before finding me, they had already been prepared to donate all their property in the future. Now that their beloved daughter was back by their side, what were they going to do? Naturally, they would dote on me to the extreme, spoiling me like a little princess. Gorgeous clothes and jewelry were continuously delivered to my cloakroom like a flowing stream. My mother's favorite thing to do was to accompany me shopping, buying me everything, and dressing me up like a princess. My father, on the other hand, was enthusiastic about taking me to various banquets and events. Each time, he would patiently introduce my existence to everyone. According to him, he wanted everyone to know that I was the most precious treasure of the Edward family. Quite coincidentally, at a dinner party, I saw the grandpa I had saved before. After waking up in the hospital, he checked the surveillance and, knowing that I had saved him, found me and thanked me profusely and offered me a generous gift. I refused his generous gift. I really just wanted to save him. At the dinner party, he looked at me with a kind smile and said, "I didn't expect to meet you here." "Just right, my grandson has just come back from abroad. Let me introduce you to." He waved his grandson over, and I looked up to see a tall and handsome young man walking towards me. Seeing that I was looking at him, he raised his wine glass and gestured slightly. "Hello, I'm Rhett." He smiled. I also smiled and said, "Hello, I'm Diana." Yes, I changed back to my original name and also started a new life. As for the future, who can say for sure? After all, I'm still young and have infinite possibilities.